Thank you, Fáil. Taoiseach, people are angry enough out there with the decision of the government to double the property tax for 2014, with many people now facing bills on average of €400, many €600 and beyond that. But people became even more angry and annoyed with the letters that issued from Revenue last week in relation to the method of paying the property tax, and essentially making it the case that those who are paying, who wish to pay by credit or debit card, would have to pay 4 months earlier and would have to pay the 2014 property tax in 2013. Now, notwithstanding the anger of people, it will have also an impact on a very fragile domestic economy coming into a critical period at Christmas time, and where spending power is everything and where consumer sentiment is so important. But the government's response has been very incoherent and almost split down the middle, insofar as the Labour Party has taken a stance over the last number of days of calling in the Revenue. The Taoiseach is saying they should change their policy. You have stood firm. Minister Varadkar has said he's not plus, he can't understand what the Revenue are at. But the bottom line here, Taoiseach, is yourself and the Minister of Finance have supported Revenue. And the reason is, you said government sets policy, Revenue implements it. And you're correct in that respect, because it was a legislative template in the form of the finance bill, the local property tax bill, that essentially gave the framework for Revenue to issue those letters, and in particular in relation to credit and debit cards. And the bottom line, Taoiseach, is the policy is wrong because the legislation was rushed. It was rammed through the Dáil here, with absolutely no time for anybody to tease out the issues in the bill, to put forward amendments, and it's a very good example of why you shouldn't have rushed through that legislation, given the lack of any deadline whatsoever. So the question I have to put to you, Taoiseach, is this: would you accept, first of all, could you just clarify for me whether you or the Minister for Finance or the Department of Finance were aware that these letters were issuing or are to be issued by Revenue? And secondly, would you not agree that those who wish to pay by credit or debit cards should be able to do so in 2014? And would you agree to bring forward an amendment to the finance bill, the local property tax bill? It's very simple. If you really believe, and if the Labour Party believe, that the policy is wrong and that people who are obliged to pay a bill for 2014 should not be required to pay that in 2013, it's very simple. You can table an amendment to section 12(1) of the bill to ensure that Revenue not require any person to make payment prior to the 1st of January of the year following the liability date, regardless of the payment method that they choose. So it's very simple and straightforward. Would you agree to such an amendment, which would clarify this once and for all and put the policy framework right?
First of all, I want to thank the people who have paid their property charges for 2013 for the half year that applies. And as Deputy Martin's aware, this property charge was introduced instead of income tax increases as an important element of growing the economy and funding local services. I think it's important to clear up a number of matters here. The tax for 2014 is due in 2014. It is not due to be paid. There is no legal obligation upon anybody to pay any property charge for 2014 in the remaining weeks of this year, 2013. It doesn't prevent somebody from doing so if they wish. And I'd remind you that Section 119 of the Finance Local Property Tax Act of 2012, as amended, set out the dates for payment of the local property tax. And for the year 2014, the payment due date is the 1st of January 2014. The legislation also makes provisions for property owners to pay the tax for 2014 in equal instalments over the period the 1st of January 2014 to the end of December 2014. Now, the Minister for Finance has made it perfectly clear, Deputy Martin, that the preference of the Government and the preference of the Department of Finance is to receive the payments for 2014 in 2014. And there are a number of options set out there by the Revenue Commissioners so that people can give effect to that principle in the law, that the 2014 property tax is due in 2014 and not now. So from this forum here, let me say that there is no obligation whatsoever, legal or otherwise,
Stay quiet, please.
upon people to pay the 2014 tax in the remaining weeks of this year, 2013. And I might point out to you that there is a difference between the debit card and the debit mandate, because for those who go online, clearly they can choose the option of giving the Revenue Commissioners authority to have a debit mandate, which is effective from the 21st of March 2014, and all they have to do there is put in their sorting code and their bank account number, because for those who either have a chequebook, a credit card or a debit card, they have to have a bank account. So the simplest way, as one of the many options that are there for people, is to give that authorisation as a debit mandate effective from the 21st of March, giving effect to the payment of the property charge. So nobody has to pay the 2014 property charge in 2013. You may laugh at it, Deputy Cowan, you may laugh at it, but that's the fact of what the law is, and people have numerous options to give effect to that.
Deputy Martin, since when did you become leader of the Fianna Fáil party? No, not in Leader's questions. Deputy, you better talk to Deputy Martin.
Taoiseach, if you could, I think what you should do, Taoiseach, as an aside, is simply, you might explain all of that to the Taoiseach, and you might explain all of that to the Chairman of the Finance Committee, who on his own bat went off and said he was hauling in the revenue, because something terrible had happened, he said, and something needed to change. The Taoiseach likewise said the same thing. And that incoherence has been at the heart of government on this topic, Taoiseach. So would you please explain it to the Taoiseach in the first instance in terms of this? Now, in terms of, there is an issue here, Taoiseach, in terms of payment method. That's the core of the point. If you pay by debit or credit card, you will be paying this year, and you will be penalised for taking that particular method of payment. Now, there was no basis for that. And very simply, you can amend the legislation if you're serious, and if the Taoiseach is serious. No point in dragging in the Chairman of Revenue before a committee and having a big sort of optical sort of thing over, we're great people.
Thank you.
We're fighting on behalf of the people. We have revenue hauled in.
Question, please.
When the answer lies in your hands, and in the Taoiseach's hands, in terms of amending the legislation, very simply, by saying that revenue shall not require anyone to pay the property tax in 2013 via the particular payment method that they adopt, or by virtue of the payment method that they adopt. And there's an important reason for this, Taoiseach.
Thank you.
And it's this, that the domestic economy is still fragile, and it does need maximum consumer spend coming into Christmas. And the reality is you're taking more money out of the economy as a result of this than is necessary at this particular point in time. Now, you didn't ask the first question I asked you, Taoiseach. Were you aware, and was the Minister aware, that these letters were issuing last week?
Thank you. Taoiseach.
Well, the date in question in reference to the letter is a filing date. It doesn't have a statutory base. It's a reminder to people that the 2014 property tax is due in 2014. And the Revenue Commissioners pointed out that on the form circulated that the person has the option of
sorry, would you please?
Person has the option of doing it by paper or online as it requires.
I'd just say thank you.
So the. Are you asking the questions? Or?
Sorry, would you please?
Yes.
Would you please allow the Taoiseach to reply? Thank you.
The filing date that has been mentioned is not a statutory date for payment. It is a request to all of those people who did not put their property tax payments on direct debit to remind them that the payment is due in 2014 and setting out options for them to pay it in 2014.
All right.
So the position is, if you, for instance, submit a cheque to the Revenue Commissioners by cheque or postal order will apply from the 1st of January. There are 7 options there, Deputy Martin, that people can spread their payments
over time
by direct debit from the 15th of every month, on the 15th of every month, by single mandate authority from the 21st of March, or by payment over in a variety of ways at outlets that are set up for this very purpose. And again, I thank the people who have paid their property charge, and I remind you, Deputy Martin, that this was introduced as an alternative to increased income tax. We don't want tax on jobs. It's to fund local services and to grow our economy. I remind you also, the chairman of the Revenue Commissioners is appearing before the Oireachtas Committee on Thursday. Obviously.
Sorry, would you please?
Well, if you refer to the chairman of the Revenue Commissioners as a scapegoat, I think that's an insult. That's an insult, Deputy Healy-Rae, and you should withdraw that remark.
Thank you.
The chairman of the Revenue Commissioners will appear before the Oireachtas Committee on Thursday, and obviously will deal with all of these matters insofar as the Revenue Commissioners are completely independent of government.
Thank you.
You're aware, government set what tax policy is, and that's implemented by the Revenue Commissioners. Clearly, I do hope that everybody will fully understand very clearly on Thursday what is involved here.